This video is about indices and negatives. When multiplying or dividing, count the number of negatives. An odd number of negatives gives a negative answer. An even number of negatives gives a positive answer. Let's look at some examples. Here's one here where there's a negative outside the bracket. That means the negative is not to the power 3. There is just one negative. So because there's one negative, the answer is negative. And the answer will be negative 5 cubed y to the power 3. In the next question, which is this one below it, the negative is inside the bracket, so it is to the power 3. So in effect, there are 3 negatives. 3 is an odd number, so that means the answer will again be negative. So this one will be negative, and it'll be 5 cubed y cubed. For this last example, you'll notice there are 2 terms multiplied together. There's a negative here in front of the minus 5, in front of the 5y, and there's another negative inside the bracket, which means there's actually 5 of those negatives. So altogether, there are 6 negatives. So the answer to this one will be positive. Now, if we actually do the indice part, we've got 5 to the power 6, because there are 6 of those, and y to the power 6. In this next example, there is a negative outside the bracket and a negative inside the bracket. On the top line, there is one negative, and on the bottom line, there are 3 negatives. So 1 on the numerator and 3 in the denominator. That means there are 4 negatives, which means the answer is positive. And the answer will be positive 5 to the power 4 y to the power 4 over 5 to the power 3 y to the power 3, which will simplify to 5y. Why is this so? Well, let's look at some examples. Minus 2 inside a bracket to the power 5 means minus 2 by minus 2 by minus 2 by minus 2 by minus 2. The first 2 2's have 2 negatives, that becomes positive. The next 2 2's have 2 negatives, which becomes positive. And there's 1 extra negative on the end. The first 2 positives together make a positive, and the extra negative and the positive make a negative. So in other words, every time you've got 2 negatives, they cancel each other out to a positive, if you like, and there's an extra negative on the end which makes it negative. In the second example, there are 4 negatives. 2 negatives make a positive, 2 negatives make a positive, and so the answer is a positive and a positive, which makes a positive. So in the first example, there are an odd number of negatives. In the second example, is an even number of negatives. So you can see that an odd number of negatives always makes a negative, and an even number of negatives always makes a positive.